Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Unbettable. I am Mondo here with Holmes and Gary. It is football season. Football has happened. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, Holmes and Gary, how was your weekend?
Dude, awesome. We finally got to see live action college football again, and one of our most hated rivals lost. I don't really think it could get much better than that. So, great
Yeah.
one for me.
Yeah, good weekend overall. For the same reason that Holmes said. Got to chill out from the work week, just vibe, play some college football with the boys, watch some college football with the boys. And also on a work-related note, I got 4 sales this weekend, leaving me one short of my monthly quota to
This
get
guy.
promoted. So I have been grinding my dick off, trying to get promoted, trying to make some money.
Yes,
Hopefully we
sir.
get up to this next level soon, because then your boy starts making commission. But if you want to get recruited, or you have a daughter or a son that wants to get recruited,
Don't plug them.
bang my line. I got you. I didn't say the name of the business. Just bang my line. I got you.
All right. My bad. That's all, Gary. You got a good weekend. What else was going on?
Oh, and then we had fantasy draft. And it's our first. So last year, me and Mondo and a few other guys, we started a fantasy league on this app called Sleeper. Shout out Sleeper, pretty user-friendly app, I would say. But we started a dynasty league, which is a first for me. So this most previous draft we did was the first draft we did in which we had keepers. And Mondo constantly reminded people, set your keepers. And I was one of four that didn't. And then he allowed me to keep two. So I kept Josh Allen and Diggs. And actually drafted a pretty okay
Mhm.
team with what I had. I gave away my first round pick to Mondo in a trade that would have benefited me if I would have actually held on to my keepers like I was supposed to. But a lot of the guys I have, what I'll say is were expected to do great things last year, but fell short. That's the theme of my team this year. So I also feel like a lot of these guys could
You're gonna
easily
fall
be
short.
replaced. No, that what I'm saying is like I feel like a lot of these guys were slowly but surely getting replaced last year, and I feel like this year is going to be kind of the year where if they want to keep their job at the team they're playing for, they're going to have to do some crazy shit. For example, Aaron Jones battling injury, coming back. Hopefully, he's going to have a good season this year. I had Montgomery, kind of got replaced last year as, kind of turned into RB2, more like a punching guy. So hopefully, he turns up this year, but just kind of players like that. So I'm excited for it. I'm not hurt, unlike some people in our league. You know who you are. Stop being a bitch and just suck it up. It's gonna be fun. Fantasy's always fun. I feel like sometimes fantasy gets mad personal for no reason.
Mhm.
And I love the competition. It's just some people fail to realize that it's a competition and they start to take shit personal. Fantasy's supposed to be fun, so have fun with your teams. That's
Love
what
it, Gare. Good preach
Yeah,
there.
I love that, Gare. And I wasn't trying to be an asshole. Like, this is my first time running a dynasty league. But I did remind people like 5 or 6 times, just set
he
your
did.
keepers by 8 p.m. the day before.
He did.
Nobody did that. I was originally just going to let it ride because I was going to get Bijan Robinson, Jameer Gibbs, and my team would never lose again. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to be an asshole. So I made a little chat full of the people that actually kept their team. And I was like, what do you guys want to do? And one that came up was one keeper and they get a first round pick. Now instead of that, was like, I'll be a little bit nicer. I'll give them two keepers and a first pick. So that way it kind of like evened everything out overall. But I was just like, damn, man, like, can't shit ever run smooth in fantasy? Like, I feel like no matter what league you're in, like, hell always breaks loose, bro. Every single time. Whether it's like someone
Always some
not
shit
doing
hit the
their
fan.
punishment or like, you draft a bad team and everyone's hurt or like just there's always shit going down, like mad personal beef. I literally got called an op for just like giving two keepers back.
For being a commissioner.
Yeah, for doing what I'm supposed to do. Not trying to be an
Yeah.
asshole. I'm trying to have fun.
And it is. I would recommend Dynasty to anybody that's never done it. It's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting. Definitely spices up the way you pick players. You're looking for young guys that have a lot of potential rather than old heads that have proved their worth. You know, you're like drafting a real team is almost what it
Yeah.
feels like. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, dude, I'm hyped. Unrelated, well, kind of related. I mean, he was the number one pick in the draft because Sang didn't choose any keepers. CD Lamb. Gary, tell us a little bit about what happened with CD Lamb.
Yes, Jerry Jones finally stopped fucking around and gave this guy a 4-year, $138 million contract, making him the second highest non-QB position player in the NFL. Second highest paid. I don't think I said paid, so second, not second highest, but second highest paid, with $38 million guaranteed on top of that. And if I'm CeeDee Lamb, I'm happy at the end of the day. Do I think he could have maybe taken his career elsewhere and had more success? Yes. But you know, he has his name made for the Cowboys. Everybody knows who fucking CeeDee Lamb is. Arguably one of the best wide receivers in the league. Statistically, at least that is. Unfortunately, I was explaining this to somebody like this earlier because I talked to my boys that don't really watch football a whole lot. And, you know, the way I learn is by teaching others. So, you know, it's like I can like CeeDee Lamb is one of the best wide receivers in the league, but he has one of the most overhyped QBs in the league following him up. Where like what I mean by that is like everybody thinks Dak Prescott is like a gift from God that is gonna like be one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, but he doesn't have the stat line to show it. He's never won a ring. He doesn't make it far in championships. And you know, at the end of the day, the only way the receiver is going to get the ball is if the quarterback throws it to him. So it's like yes, it's good that he's staying with the Cowboys, but I feel like the problem doesn't really get solved there by CD getting a contract. I think that, you know, I mean, obviously Dak is their franchise QB, and that's not going to change until he retires, most likely. But it kind of makes me feel bad for CD because I think he is definitely a Super Bowl contender as a player. Like he could definitely play with the greats, but Dak, on the other hand, just can't. So
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, that Jerry Jones has to go be negative in the media and all this shit and just like make it so much harder to deal with than it already is. But that's just the way I kind of saw it. But Holmes, what was
I mean, it's
your
just yeah, just good for the guy that finally like get paid and is actually going to get on the practice field. I mean, I have a bunch of fantasy drafts coming up. I was worried the dude was literally just going to continue to sit out before game action. Like, I don't want to see that him going into week one with no practice, no training camp whatsoever. Dude's going to get injured, and I do not want to see that for this guy. So glad that he was able to get paid, get it sorted out before the season starts in a relatively decent amount of time. I mean, I think if anything, as much as it helps out the wide receiving core for the Cowboys having one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in football on your team, but they paid him quite a bit of money, and if they're considering paying Dak as well when his payday comes up, they're gonna have a lot of money tied up in those two individuals on the team, and that is gonna make it really, really tough to pay anybody else, defensively or offensively. That is honestly that could be a really big downfall of this team going forward.
Mhm.
I think it's been a knock on them in the past too, just the past couple years with much money as they've had tied up in Dak, haven't been able to pay their guys, haven't been able to make it far in the playoffs. Really, just a regular season juggernaut until the playoffs hit and it goes downhill.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree with that. Speaking of a team everybody hates, over to a team we definitely hate. Ladies and gentlemen, FSU is officially eliminated from the college football playoffs as of still in August. We're still in August. We haven't played a snap of Gator football, and this season was already a success. FSU embarrassed themselves on a national stage. Scratch that. An international stage. They are fucking horrible. I've been holding it in I work with a bunch of FSU people. They were all butt hurt. I was soaking it in, getting ready for this fucking podcast. And I was like, man, I don't even need to watch football this year. I'm already happy. FSU fucking blows. DJ Ukulele is fucking terrible. And they actually bought into him. That's the worst part. They bought into DJ. That's crazy. He's failed everywhere he's went, but they bought in. What a bunch of delusional losers. Gary, give me your takeaways from the FSU embarrassment.
There's a lot to absorb from this game. We all booked the under, and I'm not gonna lie, in the first 5 minutes of that game, I was a little worried.
Yeah.
Teams had already put up a tutty. No team had any sort of run defense going on. It was kind of scary. And then Georgia Tech turned it up, and you could tell that they wanted it more. And their play style just fit the conditions perfectly. Pouring rain the entire game. I will say that. That was a crazy first game environment to play in. New country, new fans, new like weather. Like it was different. And then, Georgia Tech tightened up and their defense played lights out. Their offense was insane. I can't think of their quarterback's name off the top of my head. But he definitely deserves a lot of recognition. And the kicker, for him to get his mental right before that last kick, sealed the deal, win the game. That was awesome. Now I want to talk about DJ a little bit. So DJ, I think this is pretty well known that he is a very pass-oriented quarterback. He's a big guy. He can't really run an RPO very well. It doesn't look that good. Couldn't run a run play, which is what he really needed to win that game. There's no way you're slinging the rock when it's, pouring and the rain's going sideways. Like it's not how you should try to win that football game. You should try to adapt rather than just being, non-complacent and not being able to change your ways. They just refused to do it. And they kept launching these bombs and nothing was connecting. And, at the end of the day, that's why his stats looked the way they did. I mean, they purely reflected that he is not a versatile quarterback, that he cannot really adapt to different defenses very well. And if the conditions are shit, he's going to play like shit. I mean, what happens? FSU has so much hype. You saw how many fans traveled to Ireland from, potentially Tallahassee to see this ass whooping take place. What happens when you're playing in the swamp? I mean, this year it's at Dawg, but like, what happens when you play these rival schools and you have all this commotion going on? I mean, that's the electricity of college football now, is like the fans getting rowdy and, are you going to be able to handle it? And I feel like that game was just pure evidence that he can't. I mean, it was loud, it was rainy, and he sucked dick. Like that, straight up, that's what happened. So, Holmes, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, man, both of you guys, great points. I don't, I probably won't spend too much time on DJU. Like, just a lot of dink and dunk stuff. Couldn't connect on the medium to long passes. It just didn't look very comfortable. It didn't look like anything was clicking for the guy. But I got a lot of stats on just other aspects of the game because, first of all, this was the first top 10 win that Georgia Tech has got since 2015. And the last time they got one of these wins, it was against FSU, 22-16. They win this game 24-21, last second field goal. But man, this game, watching it, did not feel like it was as close as the score indicates. Georgia Tech's defense, they look like heat seekers out there. Like those guys were on every single tackle. Georgia Tech, they had 7 tackle for losses compared to FSU's 3. And that was a big thing coming into the game. Like everybody thought that Florida State's line of scrimmage was going to dominate both ways, offensively, defensively. That was not the case at all. Georgia Tech actually bullied those dudes a little bit. And that was surprising to see. I had Georgia Tech plus 12.5 in the game. I loved that so much. I knew that Georgia Tech was going to keep it close, but I'm going to be real. I said it on the last podcast. I didn't think that they were going to win. I mean, that battle of the line of scrimmage, I listened to Brent Key on College Game Day talk about it. That was the first thing he said. What do you need to do to win this game? Like, dude, we got to win in the line of scrimmage. Like, offensively and defensively, they came out and did that. And it was very, very impressive. In terms of rushing, FSU only averaged 3.2 yards on the ground. per rush. Georgia Tech averaged 5.3. I mean, Jamal Haynes looked amazing. 11 rushes for 75 yards and 2 TDs. Haynes King was amazing in the rush game as well. 15 for 54. He was absolutely reading the option plays beautifully every single time. And over on the other side, like Roydell Williams, 12 for 38 and a touchdown. Lawrence Toafili, 8 for 32 and a touchdown. Those guys could never just really get going. Lawrence Toafili had that big 28-yard touchdown run in the beginning of the game, and everybody was like, oh man, it's FSU's ground game about to dominate here. And nothing happened from that point out. Georgia Tech's defense was very, very stout. All in all, I thought it was just more than anything a very, very impressive performance from Georgia Tech, who has looked like they have steadily increased the amount of talent level that they have on that team. And for FSU, man, like to come out and blow that first game in conference play, that is a big stinger. I am very interested to see how they're going to respond to that because that blows for them.
I'm excited, bro. I'm excited to see what happens. What's gonna
Yeah.
happen? Gary, if you had a prediction, what's gonna happen?
I really still think, I mean, as much as it pains me to say it, I really still think FSU is going to be an overall pretty dominant team this year. Like I said, I feel like conditions played a big factor in this game. I feel like one team was more prepared to face adversity than the other. And at the end of the day, one team wanted it more. And now FSU really has to want it because even though there are 12 playoff spots, you have to realize that these playoff spots are going to be contended with other great powerhouse schools. And if you're taking an early L to a team that's not really considered up there in your bracket, it's definitely a mental stinger. Like, I mean, it was pretty evident Mike Norvell was not happy, slung the fuck out of that headset after the game, which I thought was like my favorite part of watching that. Because it's always funny to see a coach just lose a shit. But I also feel like that's going to cause a lot of tension in the locker room. I mean, these receivers after game one, I don't really know if I would have full front faith in my quarterback to deliver every game. So I feel like they're still going to be an overall good team. I feel like they might lose 2 or 3 more games throughout their season. One definitely being the University of Florida. But that's guaranteed. So, how they respond is really going to be what determines the rest of their season, I think.
Holmes prediction?
I mean, as much as Gary said, like it was a mental stinger. I mean, I really agree with you on that one. I think you kind of hit it right on the nose saying that. Um, I mean, I don't think that their schedule is really as easy as people would make it out to be. I mean, they have some tough games on there: Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame. I think even Florida is going to be a pretty tough game at the end of the season. They got like some cakewalk games in there, but you never know. Games against SMU, game against a really hungry group of five team in Memphis that a lot of people think are going to be very, very good this season. Like they can creep up on Florida State very, very easily. They just have to respond very well at home against Boston College this next week. Um, they just have a lot of things to work on, man, on the lines of scrimmage. They got to get the confidence higher with DJU. They got to figure out what to do with him, how to utilize him. Because right now it doesn't look like it's going to work out too well in their favor, and I don't know how far I see him going.
Well, if it can't get any worse, let's move to studs and duds. They're my dud. So if it doesn't get any worse, they're still my dud.
There you
FSU
go.
sucks, embarrassed themselves on an international stage. They stuck. They suck. Gary, who's your dud?
I mean, this is gonna sound cliche as fuck, but my dud is myself this week. I feel like I caused myself a lot of stress on the fantasy side by not taking my keepers and just not managing my time very wisely. So I'm gonna give the dud to myself. I gotta work on my time management and try to figure out, a good balance between my priorities. So myself.
All right. Holmes.
I am going to go with Charles Lester III of Florida State. I don't know if you saw this video on Unnecessary Roughness Twitter. This dude was standing outside of the Georgia Tech bus, staring down like all the players as they got off the bus. Like, definitely just trying to film like a little hype video for himself. This is a true freshman, by the way. This guy did not see the field, got absolutely zero stats to his name. And I thought that was a big clown moment from this guy. I have to put this guy in duds because when I saw that video, I was like, dude, when Georgia Tech beats you guys, that is not going to feel good.
FSU loves to clown themselves on social media, dude, and they do it so unintentionally that that's what makes it truly funny. Like
I don't know.
I love FSU social media. Keep up the dog shit work, boys. It's awesome.
Dude, the jig was amazing. Did you
Yeah, the
guys see the
jig.
jig videos?
It was
That was
I
awesome.
just always
crazy.
I always think of that dance that that one guy was doing in the bathroom on TikTok where he's like this, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, in the FSU
Florida
uniform. Yeah,
always posts that shit. Yeah, it's fucking
Yeah.
hilarious.
100%.
My stud from the weekend, Ted Lasso, is coming back for a season 4. The absolute legendary show. I am rewatching it now. I cannot wait for season 4. And apparently, everyone's going to reprise their roles. So everyone's coming back.
Love it.
Yeah. Gary, who's your stud?
My stud, I'm gonna go with the hometown heroes. The Lake Mary boys Little League team came out and won the Little League World Series against Chinese Taipei or China Taipei, whatever it's called. Lake Mary, for reference, is like 30 minutes away from us. It was like all over our local news for months, like hyping these boys up, being like, "Hey, come out to this, you know, charity thing and help raise money for these kids." And they ended up winning the whole thing. It was just truly like an awesome story to follow. Got some pretty funny characters on their team. And yeah, like it's cool to see, you know. So props to them.
Holmes.
Fantastic stud pick. Fantastic. I'm going to go with Brent Key, the Georgia Tech coach. I mean, this guy had the boys ready to play in this game. Like this, I feel like was a master class of his coaching. He has built this program up in the past couple years that he has been there to be where they're at now, where they can go on the road on an international stage and knock off a top 10 team, play them down wire to wire. I mean, it was very, very impressive to see all of the effort on both the offensive, defensive, special team side. Georgia Tech was all over the ball all game long. You love to see it. Brent Key, Georgia Tech coach. Shout out to that guy. He put on an absolute performance.
Absolute clinic.
Sir.
All right, Holmes. While we're over at you, you said you've been getting a couple questions regarding fantasy football and some advice from us. So I don't know what's coming next, but go ahead.
All right. People have asked me a few questions. You guys were just talking about fantasy football at the start of the episode. We're all getting into drafts. I have a bunch of drafts coming up. So here's just a few questions, draft strategy, where your heads are at, what you guys are thinking in terms of this year's draft. First one I want to ask, what do you guys think about the zero RB strategy? The waiting on running backs, not drafting them until super, super late in drafts, just trying to go heavy on the wide receivers, tight ends, really good quarterback, flex players. Do you guys ever use this strategy? Like, what do you think about that?
Care?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna have to leave after this question. I apologize. I gotta pick up my dad from the store because the car is fucked up. Um, but what I feel about this is that I think I don't want to call it stupid because everybody plays the way they play. But in my mind, in my opinion, I think it's pretty dumb. I think that nowadays a lot of football games are won through that run game. I feel like the NFL has kind of shifted to this run heavy offense that's way more electric for the people to watch, rather than just watching people launch bombs all day and then not connect on 90% of their throws. In my opinion, I think watching the run game is more fun. And I think a lot of the good teams that we've seen come out of these past couple seasons have been pretty dominant in their run game. So me personally, I think that not taking a good running back is kind of brain dead. But yeah, I'll see y'all boys later. Love you guys.
Peace,
Bye,
Gary.
Gary. Yeah,
What I
that was
got?
the dumbest statement I've ever heard in my life. It is basically an air raid NFL. You can draft multiple receivers before taking a running back. You may lose a couple fantasy points there, but as long as you're in a PPR league, like the sky's the limit. You can get so many points on receivers these days. especially if you can get him early in the draft. So I think
Yeah,
it's
I think
definitely a strategy, but in my eyes, you should take a running back in at least the second, if not the third. Then,
I agree with you. I feel like that is a solid strat. It's one that I've used in recent years for sure. Like the NFL is just so receiver heavy, and I feel like it's worth it to be able to get those guys at the top that are going to consistently produce for you. Unless you're in a position to get a really like top tier RB like this year, if you're not able to get like a CMC, a Bijan, a Brees, maybe even like a Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor right off the board, it starts to fall off a little bit from there. So like you don't, I guess, want to put all of your stock in these guys who won't be as elite as the top end guys if you don't have the chance to get them. Plus, and this is going to go right into my second question, running backs health is just so volatile. Like
mhm.
we've seen backups take the jobs of injured guys all the time. Who's your favorite handcuff RB? Who would you like behind somebody that could potentially, God forbid, if they get injured this year, who would slot in nicely to start a role?
I like Blake Corum a lot, honestly. I mean, Kyron
Mhm.
Williams is obviously or Kyron Williams is in a feature back role out there in LA, but I would say Blake Corum. I mean, he's a rookie. We know he's a beast. He's going to get some share of the carries. If Kyron goes down, I mean, it's not unlikely. He went down for a little bit last year, so
Mhm.
honestly, that's got to be the move.
Yeah, I like that pick. That was probably my number two. My number one, honestly, is Trey Benson, running back out of
Yeah.
Florida State. He's the second guy on the depth chart out there in Arizona, and he's behind one of the most injury-prone guys in the league. I mean, James Conner, unfortunately, with as good of a talent as he is, as good of a goal line back as he is, the guy's not able to stay on the field for all 17 games. So, I mean, if he
Hmm.
misses a little bit of time, I love Trey Benson to be able to slot in there. Move on to the next question. How early are you trying to target a QB in traditional snake drafts?
That's a good question. It kind of depends on where you fall in the draft. I would say I personally like to wait on my QB and get one later in the draft. I feel like most QBs put up consistent 20 bombs across the board. And I like, positionally putting things out there, but maybe like the seventh, eighth round, I'd start looking unless like Josh Allen somehow falls to me in like the fifth or sixth, which doesn't happen. But
Yeah, I agree. I think if your best available player is a quarterback that's going to give you a lot of rushing value, yeah, go with somebody like a Jalen Hurts, a Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen, somebody who's going to provide a lot of extra points for you on the ground. But if you want to wait, I think you can get a lot of good, consistent passing production from guys like Jordan Love,
mhm.
Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, guys that aren't really going super high in drafts. They're not going to give you a ton of rushing value, but they're going to pass for a ton of yards, probably a ton of touchdowns as well. Really helps you out with the point value there.
Yep,
Let's get two more in here real quick.
let's do it.
Favorite rookie wide receiver target this year?
So the obvious answer is Maserati Marv. I mean, no brainer, right?
Yeah.
But one that I'm kind of looking at later in the draft is Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville. He's the clear
Yeah.
wide receiver too. He's got Gabe Davis as his three. And I feel like he'll get a solid percentage of the targets out there. I feel good about it. He's an elite young player.
I love that. That's such a good sleeper pick for late in draft. So definitely write that one down. I honestly really like Xavier Worthy out
Hmm.
of Kansas City. Like we saw this guy run the fastest 40-yard dash time ever at the combine. I know sometimes that really doesn't work out a lot for guys that run super fast in the 40, but I mean to me he seems like a Tyreek Hill clone for the Chiefs
Oh
almost.
yeah.
Like this is the guy that they want to be able to stretch the field, outrace any DB on the field. I think he could be a pretty lethal threat. And with Pat Mahomes giving him the ball, like I think that's going to be an elite connection. If you want
Mhm.
kind of a sleeper one too, I guess maybe Malik Neighbors out of New York. I just don't love the connection with Daniel Jones. Like I really don't know how well that's going to work out. I just know that Malik Neighbors is a freaking weapon. That guy's an insane talent.
Mhm.
All right, last question before we sign off here. What is your ideal pick position in drafts? Like, do you want the first half? Do you want the second half? You want middle? You want last? You want first? Any pick you like more than the rest?
So obviously you want one or two. I mean, that's kind of uh, they're in their own category, being like CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek, and McCaffrey. So I guess like anywhere in the top 3. But if not, you can go down to the 6th and still get a really good player. So if you ever just fall in the top 6, like you got a good draft setup. Just don't end up with the 9th pick like me. It's not fun.
Yeah, I have to say like the middle portion is my favorite for sure. Anywhere between like 4 to 7, maybe even 8. I mean, to be able to get mostly consistent picks round in and round out, I feel like I am able to construct a little bit better of a team, a more well-rounded team. A lot of times, I mean, if you're drafting first, you're drafting last, in those couple of picks, your strategy's really got to alter because you're picking at the turn. That's 2 guys really quick. You got to know who you want to get because you're not going to be up for another 10, 20, whatever it is, picks. It's going to be a while before you get back up on the board. So at the turn, you definitely got to alter the strategy a little bit. But I like the consistency of being able to go in the middle.
Mhm.
Just really got to work with whatever comes your way.
Yeah, no, unfortunately you do. That's why you try and get the draft order done in advance. Gives you a little bit of time to prep.
Yeah, get some practice.
Yeah, but next episode, Holmes, guess what we got? We got the college football preview, man. We got bets for college football, real bets. We
Yes, we
got
do.
Gators to talk. It's all next episode, and we got a ranker.
Yeah.
I
It's going
can't
to be
wait.
awesome. Picks are going to go crazy. CFB analysis is going to go crazy. I'm very hyped for it. Be sure you tune in.
And with that, we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.